would you like your Councilmember Cody, Councilmember Bixby,
Morning.
Mayor Pro Tem Smith, Councilmember Whitliff, and Councilmember Gunstad. So welcome again.
Thank you.
Thank you for coming. You had a tour of our community yesterday, and we got to meet you last night. We looked over your resume, and of course, there's still a whole lot more we need to know about you, and I'm sure you want us to know about you. We have a slew of questions that probably take around an hour or so. And I'll start off. I'll ask a few questions and then ask if council has any follow-up. And then each of us will probably ask a few questions through the packet that we're asking all our candidates. And at the end, you'll have an opportunity to ask us any questions that you might still have about us or our community. Okay?
Sounds terrific.
All right. So in brief summary, tell us about your experience. Tell us why you applied to Manistee and how you think your style and expertise will be the right fit for us.
Well, with experience, as my resume states, I'll start where I'm at now. I'm the city administrator for the city of Wilmington, Illinois, which is about 15-20 minutes south of Joliet, Illinois. So we're in the metropolitan area of Chicago. Similar community in size, and a lot of things similar in regards to a historic downtown, and with the recreational activities that we have. We're surrounded by conservation, natural resource areas for fishing and hunting, and we have the famous Route 66 that goes right through our community, and we have one of the third most photographed icon in Wilmington. So we deal with a lot of tourism, especially international tourism too. So that experience sort of fits well with my style over the years of government. And then I had, before I came on to Wilmington, I was working in a security supervisory role for one of the busiest outlet malls in the Chicago area. Got recruited there as I was in my semi-retirement mode by the police chief of Aurora, Illinois. They needed someone to come in there and sort of reorganize their security department for that outlet mall, and he recommended me to the corporation that took that outlet mall over. So that was a short stint, 6 months, but sort of fit my management style because we needed to reorganize, we needed to recruit, sort of professionalize the security and of the operation. And the best thing I liked about it was we walked a lot. It's an outdoor mall, so it was very good for my health, for one, which was the second benefit. When you get retired, you sort of get a little slower in life. But the thing about it is I got to meet lots of people. It was like every day was an adventure of talking to internationals or talking to the business owners, learning the ins and outs of the retail business, which was, I think, another good experience that I added into my resume is now I got the private side. A lot of times just talking to that mom and pop owner, which there's a few in there, versus the the Reeboks of the world and the corporate. Why is business so important to them? Of their customer service, security, and you learn a lot about the culture. And I think that's one thing in my experience level is I got a multitude of cultural experiences that it just keeps me learning. Like I said last night, I'm a lifelong learner, not just in educational, in people, in business. Before that, I was in my retirement mode. I did some interim chief of police work for a small community. Love small communities. It's homeland. It's what everything is made about in this country, and you get to experience another type of culture of where I was at. Another historic downtown. They had some beautiful buildings, and even as the interim chief, the city manager sort of leaned on me a lot because of my experience with Yorkville. That was where I was a city manager for over 5 years. I started my city management career. And through that time of transition, going to be a city manager, in being the chief of police, I did that for 5 years in Yorkville. There was a community in growth. When I first started in Yorkville in '92 as a chief of police, it was about 3,500 population. Very agricultural, rural. You're outside of Naperville, about At that time, you could travel to Naperville in 20 minutes. Today, it takes probably 40 minutes to do that. So I learned a lot about growth. Learned a lot about how, businesses, why do they want to come to a community? And what are some of the best things you can do as a city? My experience from lessons learned was planning, vision planning, strategic planning. One of the things that businesses like to hear and see when they come to a community, how are you planning to spend your dollars? How are you planning, to have good employees, quality employees? And in your infrastructure, if you're really going to be able to provide what you say, when someone says, I need 500,000 gallons of water for my business, one thing to say, you could do it. Where is the proof? And one thing we learned, I've learned throughout my time is, when you talk about economic growth, the experience I had with that, it's a unique little way of remembering why sometimes a business owner or a company looks at your community. Similar to the story you talked about last night with the bluefish, another little anecdotal one that I heard from numerous companies coming into Yorkville. But made it attractive to us. We didn't know much about Yorkville. When we drove down the main drag, which is Route 47, which is a main drag like 31 here, we noticed at the north end of town, a nice big water tower, but nothing really around. Wondered why would they have a water tower way out here? And then on the east side, another big water tower was built by a developer that was doing a master plan community of 2,600 homes. And then on the south end, another developer came in and we had to put the water tower in first. But the businesses all saw those water towers and says, "Wow, you are planning, for growth." But the one thing is, you strategically are planning it. When there's water towers out in those areas, similar to your water tower, like out at the correctional facility, you can see it from this side. I didn't know what that water tower was until Jeff started told me around, the public works director, and said that's a correctional facility water tower, but it's water being served by Manistee. So when you look at your water towers, you have water towers strategically located on what your boundaries are, or where you want to be, or where you can be. Because when businesses come in, they want to know, is there actually water in the ground? There's a water tower, but it has to be a line that has to get out there somewhere. And usually where there's water, there's sewer. So infrastructure experience I have in planning for growth, and also just maintaining infrastructure. With all the new EPA regulations that are coming down the pipe every day, all throughout the career, it isn't just today, it happens in government all the time. So I got experience in the regulatory area for infrastructure. And focusing on any of that planning purposes, you really need to rely on your team to be up and running in the regulatory field. So I have experience in at least understanding that culture, understanding how that works. And of course, throughout my career, I've been building on my education. When I started as a police officer, I had a high school education, back when I was 20 years of age. And I started from the ground up. I was a police cadet, then moved into a part-time police officer, dispatcher, and then became a full-time police officer. And then as things progressed, I could see myself saying, well, this is great being in patrol. Detective was next, tactical officer. I have the gamut of the whole police operation from the ground up. And then end up being the chief of police in a couple different locations. But during that time, raising a family, I went to school. It's important. Why is school so important? Not just for my self-learning, you also have to be a role model to your employees. If you're going to promote your employees to be, have education and training, you have to have it too. And that's always the way I've been working, is lead by example. If you're going to manage, that's one thing. The one thing when you're coaching and mentoring, you got to have those credentials behind you. So I know it's a long time. I'm trying to answer all three of those. I'm really close to it now. And the last story I could tell you is when I got my master's degree in 2014, I was goaded to go back to school. And I was goaded to go back to school by numerous employees that worked for me that got placed in different, with their careers. They became chiefs of police, or they became an assistant manager and became a manager. There's an intern of mine that ultimately, replaced my position when I retired from Yorkville. And they would always see me and go, "You got your master's degree yet?" No. Or you're back to work. Don't you think you should get it? Yeah, I took 3 classes. But you know what? I saw myself in the mirror and says, wow, I need to go. I need to do it. And so I went back to school. And went back to my alma mater, Lewis University in Romaville, Illinois, and had a great time getting my master's degree. I didn't know how much fun I could have. And really, I know I might be statistical a little bit there, but it was really fun. I had a lot of team building in there, a lot of organizational leadership classes, strategic planning classes, statistics, and it really got my brain going. And I had a lot of fun doing it. I think the fun was because I didn't have children that I had to worry about, even though adult children, it seems like you got to worry about them as much. But I had more time to really do research and reading, and it really smarted me. And got my degree. So, and then after I got my degree, I then applied to become a credential manager, qualified for that through the International City Management, and was a candidate until late June, and now I'm a credential manager. The advisory board voted on it yesterday, so I'm definitely keep moving my credentials along. And if you're going to be a manager, you got to be able to walk the walk.
Thank you. Hey, you told us a lot about your experiences. I'd like to know a little bit more about you as an individual. Can you tell us what occupies your time outside of work?
Well, I'm in Michigan. I'm going to say it. I'm a Cubs fan. I'm a diehard Cubs fan from the time I was like 4 or 5 years old. My dad was, and everything else. So I watch baseball, listen to baseball more than watch. It seems to be like watching paint dry when you're watching on TV. So I'm a great radio listener. I read. I enjoy reading a lot more history now than ever before. A lot of my passion right now, because I'm working with a project with the Native Americans, is the history of the Native Americans. It is just fascinating to read that. So I'm a reader. I'm a gardener because my wife's a gardener. But I love it. I do. Every once in a while she sees me sneaking outside and just taking a picture or sitting in our garden. She's done a great job. And she's going for a Master Gardening certificate. But our oldest daughter is a horticulturist, so our whole yard is just full of all types of plants. I don't know half the names of them, but I know that looks pretty and it smells pretty. And I got a weed, but the gardening keeps us busy. We have a dog. We love walking our dog and playing with our dog and things like that. Volunteering, through the church. Still very active. Always have been in Yorkville is where we've been. So, living there for almost 23 years. We have a base at our church, and worked a lot with getting the church built way back in around 2000 when it was exploding with population, and our nice little church would get overrun, which was great. I mean, you love to have new families in there. So that's sort of it. And I guess I'm a hobbyist in cooking. That comes from the family. We were in the restaurant business and things when we were real young, and my grandpa sort of instilled in me hard work of owning a restaurant. So I still like to cook around.
Looking back over your resume, you've had a lot of accomplishments and done a lot with your career. Can you tell us 2 things that you take the most pride in accomplishing?
Yep. The one that's always dear to my heart is the Boy Scout camp that we saved. Chicago Boy Scouts Council was running into a lot of dire straits, and they had a camp that was in Yorkville that was 400 acres. And it was started to be surrounded by infrastructure for one. So it didn't take long for other residential developers saying, I want to be near the river. And this is a beautiful campground area. And they were struggling. They had one of the biggest campgrounds is up in the UP. They needed to get that fixed. So they were putting it on the market. And when we heard about it, I called the mayor up and says, what do you think, Mayor? And he goes, well, I don't think we can afford to buy 400 acres for $19 million. And I've always had this outlook, very optimistic outlook. Don't let money stop your vision, Mayor. And he goes, I knew you'd say that. Go for it. Because I'll stand behind you 110%. Do you have a plan? No. So let's sit down and try to come up with what are the assets that we can leverage to possibly get the Boy Scout Council interested in working with our community. And it didn't take much. I mean, when I called them up, and they right away said, well, that's a big mortgage for us to carry, $19 million, and why would a community want to go on a mortgage like that? And so the passion sort of, they had the same as we did. Let's try to save it. But they also had a demand that they needed some money to make it work. It didn't take much once you understand and identify what the needs are, partners, what we wanted, what they wanted, and what we can maybe find a common ground to maybe accomplish that. Once we were able to put that through, we were able to get them to put a hold on putting that up for sale. Because it was a nice article saying they were thinking about it, which a lot of people like to do, and then they sort of see what falls from the sky. So we, at that point, there was a Speaker of the House, which right now is, not in good light, but at that point he was. He lived in Yorkville, Denny Hester. So of course the mayor, got a hold of him. Also our governor, and just started making phone calls. The mayor reaching out. We sort of mapped out, who would maybe have some interest in helping out the Boy Scouts. And it didn't take much more than that, and we all of a sudden started writing grants. We got the Boy Scouts to take a breath, and we got the conservation groups involved. Once they got involved, then our Forest Preserve for the county got involved. They said, we'd love to have it. And the best thing about that, when we brought them into the fold, and that was a good thing. A lot of people thought, whoa, it's the city, we should own it, we should have it. Well, you had to start identifying what the costs were going to be, how you're going to maintain it. And plus, forest preserves are very good with open space. They have the ability there. So we brought them on board. Ultimately, the deal happened. They ended up getting, the deal was struck for $17 million. Got a little bit of a discount out of them, but not more. We thought we were going to get more. But it's a beautiful place now. It's a mile from where I live, so we'll bike over there and see the trails. And so that's an accomplishment. It's, you sit back and go, wow, that was great. And it wasn't done by one, it's done by many, but it was fun to be part of. The second accomplishment is what I talked about, succession planning, career development. I have many employees that work for me or are recruited that now are in management positions. If not management positions, I got a couple of police officers. One of them came up to me just the other day at the coffee shop and said, hey, I don't think I ever thanked you, but I got my bachelor's degree, about 10 years ago when you were the city manager. I don't know if I ever walked over and thanked you because, I really didn't like the idea that to become a sergeant, you're going to have a bachelor's degree or at least so many credit hours was the plan. We didn't adopt it as a solid goal where it was hard and fast, but when the commission would interview the candidates, that gave you extra, pumps. So he came over. I never made sergeant, and I was a little upset that I haven't, but I'm going for the test again, and I just finished my master's degree. And I heard you just did too. And I said, hey, we both made it. He says, good luck with your sergeant. But I have, employees that, call up their friends, besides employees. Why they're employees, they're employees. But it's nice now when you're in a career where you're at, just to see, the extra effort you put down, that extra, half hour talking with somebody at the end of the day, where they said, I got to sit down and talk to you about my career, and take the time to do that. And I'm pretty proud of that.
Okay, thank you. Do you have any follow-up questions? Councilman Cody?
Yes, good morning.
Good morning, sir.
Again, I guess. Have you ever been terminated, asked to resign, or resigned before termination action? Tell us about it.
No, never been terminated. I did have a contract that expired and didn't get renewed. That was back in Dixmoor when my appointment's up. In Illinois, your appointments are up at the time of when mayor's appointments, elections are done. You can only have your contracts up to that time period. So the new mayor came in, and at that point in time, it just wasn't, we just didn't have the right fit. him and I did. It was the council. And there was some background on that I'll give you about 1 minute of it, because I'm always being told not to talk about things that are negative. But I worked undercover as a police chief. I wore a wire because there was corruption going on in the community, and no one knew it. I worked, with the FBI and the U.S. Attorney's Office for 18 months, and the ultimate outcome of that was another mayor got indicted, and regretfully committed suicide the next day after his indictment. But it was in corruption. And that left a bad taste in the community. Everybody, he was a nice guy. Really personal guy, just made some bad decisions in life. And there was other people that were indicted too in the community. And so basically, my life stay there was probably numbered. And when it came up, the mayor that got appointed, he always said to me, he says, it's going to be rough. If I run again, it'll be rough to probably get you a contract. And I go, I understand, sir. And I probably wasn't prepared. I should have been. When he said that to me about 6 months before, put my resume together and say, hey, I'm going to start looking. But lesson learned.
Well, how did that shape your current management style?
Well, a couple of things. One is ethics is important. And when that decision to be made, when you have that ethical dilemma, you really need to do the right thing. And you need to not internalize it. You do need to find your mentors and people that you can talk to help you with that ethical dilemma sometimes. But that just sort of reinforced, that when you do the right thing, good things do come to you. The Yorkville job came available, got that position, worked well with, through that management style, learning, by being out in the community and working with citizens and working with all the departments, it just seemed to get reinforced every time I made a move. Because every time you do go to a new community, you learn to listen more, have more patience, you assess, evaluate. But one of the best ways, I think, to have that happen is you have to truly go out and, like last night, open yourself up. I know when I did my great scale of all my traits and all that, going through masters, they did their personality test. I got a little bit of a tendency in the introvert area, and surprised me. I'm going, you gotta be kidding me. I'm all over the place, but they explained it. So it's a challenge knowing that you got to be out there and talk to people. But I think that just fit my management style, because as a police officer, coming from a business family, you always have to be customer service. You always got to be helping and working with people, not sitting there being demanding. And when solutions are found, follow through. And not just follow through because you did a good job of solving the problem. Follow through because that's a relationship builder. And you really want to build relationships. And that's where my management style, I think, helps me a lot, going from another community and transition to another community. A lot of the communities that I work for are very similar in nature. They got working councils. They usually have a great environment of volunteerism in the community, and a lot of pride in this community. So it sort of goes hand in hand with my management style.
Okay. What adjustments will you have to make in your style or approach to be successful in our culture?
Well, it's usually the first judgment you got to make is not make a judgment. It's when you do that 20-second, 30-second review of when you meet somebody, or the first couple of minutes. Don't be quick to judgment. And I think that's important. I've had to learn that and have people mentor and some training with that. So that pre-judgment calling, and that's natural human behavior. Everybody does it. You look at something and you already have a preconceived, but if you open your eyes and listen, and I think that's the other. When you first come on, and the judgments you got to make is, you then have to look at you guys have a great strategic plan. you know, in assessing that strategic plan, but also finding out the background. You know, how did you make this plan, you know, have those goals? How did they come out? I mean, it's great to read about it, look at it, but it'd be nice to personalize it a little bit. So that, you know, as the manager, I'm your advocate, I'm your, you know, policy and, you know, enforcer to ensure that what the council, you know, agrees to do and moves forward on, you know, I'm the one that helps that guy get that there and manage it, supervise it, you know, coach along and really try to get that accomplished. You have, you know, a lot of things that are challenged right now, like any community, when it comes to the, you know, transition and the branding that you're moving towards. But like I say, when you say judgments, you know, you really got to do, when it comes down to someone sitting across the table or a plant sitting there, I got to, you know, you got to have that open mind. And the other thing is, it's always a risk in management, but I think it's what you hire managers for, is, you know, a different viewpoint. You know, you be open about that in a respectful way. You know, your list of values that you have here with respect and fairness, honesty and trustworthiness is a key. And so I would expect sometimes I might have a little bit of a different viewpoint than what the council had set up for that, or even the community, but in a respectful way, sort of, you know, reflect that. And one that I've always learned is, you know, there's a public forum and then there's a time for a private one-on-one, and that's important to build relationships.
Okay, moving on to the next question. If you're offered the position in Manistee, what do you do to intend to stay in touch with both the community, the residents, and the business community?
Well, there's a couple rules of thumbs where that becomes accomplished is follow through. You know, phone calls, you know, emails, texts, social media is sort of running our lives a little bit, but in a good way. So, you know, being in contact, you know, face to face and meeting people is one, you know, and that's very important. You know, face to face is important. But the way things to accomplish is when you meet someone, it's becoming common practice that an email shows up, you know, the next day saying, hey, thanks for meeting me. And usually there's maybe a question or maybe a comment of what you might have said in a meeting. Respond to those. By the end of the day, you might have, you know, 20 emails. But I've learned, you know, through time management and it's just the right thing to do. I know I would want a response if I sent out an email. Respond back. And sometimes the response is I'll call you, and I do. And the reason I do some of those responses is there might be a long email, and there might be multiple issues that are stated in that email. Probably better off that I call and get them on the phone and really explain it a little bit further. The other way is, as I said even last night, is the desk in the office, you know, has its place, and you need to have your office, you need to be in your office. But there's a time when you need to go out in the community. The one thing that I would always look for assistance, especially from the council, is guide me to any type of meeting that you'd love to have me attend, or you think it might be important for me to attend. I think that's, you know, just a quick email saying, hey, I just left my church meeting, and they're going to have a bazaar, you know, come up in 2 weeks. They got some questions in regards to construction that they read about. I didn't remember exactly when that construction's going to go, and then I would say, hey, do you want me to stop by the church? Or sometimes the council member just wants the information. But yeah, I would look for, because you're out in the community. That's your job in one respect, because the citizens elected you. Let me know where you want me to be, and I'd be glad to. I got to prioritize. There are times when I might say, "Whoa, the Alliance for Economic Development's got a strategic planning meeting. I need to be there because that's what you guys would want me to be." But that's the good thing to say too. Is, you know, I'd love to be there, but I've got another appointment that is, and you'll understand that. But it's those what I would call that mom and pop meeting, the neighborhood meeting, when the Elks Club maybe has something going on in the Moose. You guys have a lot of organizations here that you're a part of your community. So I would interact more with organizations face to face when I have time available.
Thank you.
Good morning, sir.
Good morning.
You've answered this question partially, but I'm going to ask it again. If we call individuals you've worked with in the past years, what are they going to tell us about you?
Well, go back past years, 25 years ago, in the law enforcement, they're going to say, they're going to say he's a good cop. And I think they're going to say, I'm the type of individual that keeps my word. You wake up every day, the one thing you have is your name and your word. And that was instilled in a lot of values. And I think the other thing they're going to say he's a problem solver. I could pick the phone up even today and call him and banter possibly something about my career or something about dealing with. And Tony's a guy you can call. He's open and ask him. The one thing they're going to probably say is he's a little bit out there in his creative mind. And he's an optimist, and sometimes he's, doesn't know how to say no. That if there's a project out there or an idea, he'd be the type of guy to go to. And I think those are some of the common things you hear from 25, 30 years ago until today. It's sort of carried out through my career. I think people I work with. The one thing they'll say is fair. When you have to deal with performance reviews and deal with any type of correction action, I give people all the opportunity in the world to do the right thing. But sometimes that doesn't work, and you have to make a decision. So even employees that I've had to relocate, it's an easy word to use. Use the word terminate. It's fair, and I think the fellow employees would say that because there a lot of times when you have a problem employee, when an employee sort of monopolizes a lot of people's time, all of a sudden when you make a decision as the manager saying it's time for this person to move on, the other employees probably say, at least I can count on him to correct the problem.
If you're chosen, what's the first 3 months of Manistee look like to you? What's going to be your priority? What are you going to do?
Try not to watch the sunset so much. It's amazing. But generally, the first thing you really do is you do that interviewing stage. And interviewing is where you listen. You try to find out more about the community. You meet the leaders. You take time to get the information from leaders of why Manistee is, where's the pride, where's the passion. Try to instill a little bit of what you know into what I know. I don't think we can do the Vulcan grip. If we could, it'd be great, because then I can instantly know everything that's in your head. But the one thing I think is very important I've learned from going from community to community is that institutional memory isn't just people that work for the community, it's people that have retired from the community. And, I would love to be able to, talk to people that even retired. I don't focus a lot, but there might be something that, at least open the door. Some retirees say, I don't, public works guy's doing a great job, I don't want to talk about it. But I would let employees know that, I'm not going behind anyone to see what's happening, but that institutional memory in a community, in a city, or any corporation, it gets lost when you lose retirees. And hopefully, sometimes they might even volunteer for something. Come back into the fold if they have some, someone's harassed them, to come back. But the department heads are, are the core. They're the team. Spend time with them. Look over their files. But the one thing that I think it goes back from that investigative, technique that I learned for many, many years It's always good to get to know, someone before you interview a little bit. So I'll definitely take time to meet with the human resource and look at the files, understand, a little bit about the employees. And then, the budget. I think that is the bread and butter of any community to get things done is your budget. It's something that's approved, something that's public, but finding out more about the history. Meeting with the CFO, Mr. Bradford. I think 13 years he's been here. He could probably provide a lot of good information, great information, and factual information, why certain things are what they are in the budget. And a little bit of the planning. I think you come up with good questions and then learn to shut up and let people talk, let them explain it. And there will be dissenting views. There'll be employees or someone that says, boy, we want to get this done and just weren't able to get it done with the prior manager. So, I know that track. And it might be a good thing. But as department heads go, they have great information. So getting a lot of information out of department heads. But one of the best resources is the people that meet the people in your office. That utility billing area, they could probably tell me more about this community than anyone else because in small communities, that's the one place that people still have where they can pay a bill with a face. And a lot of people still pay their utility bills by walking in. They couldn't mail them, they could go online, they could have an automatic deposit. But the people that are interested in the community, they like coming to City Hall. And utility billing in the office, the city clerk, I think that's great. The one that I would do in the preparation before the appointment happened during that 30 days is I would ask for certain materials. A lot of them are online already, so it's easy. But there's some that that maybe not, and I would ask for. And I would have to read a lot, just to get background and study, get prepared. Sure.
Okay, what do you see in Manistee that sets us apart from other places you've worked? What particular skills, talents, or experiences do you have that will make your tenure here successful?
Well, there's you're in a stage, as the word keeps being used, is you're in a renaissance stage with your downtown. I think it's a great stage to be in. It's exciting. I think it's challenging. It offers up things that everybody's got an idea of what might happen, and some things that have been successful already. I mean, when you could raise a certain amount of capital to take your vision to accomplishments, when the Vogue Theater was done, right, wrong, and different, it's beautiful. It's there. It's an economic engine. It's an attraction. It fits right into a brand. I think the challenge is now when you're in this renaissance period for the downtown, but when they work on and have done this in other communities, is what is the brand? And universally, what is the brand? Let's get the buy-in. Is tourism, a main focus for the historic downtown? And if tourism is it, do we have good information of what the market really is, willing to say that will attract, people to, you want to do this, spend their dollars. You would love that. And the other thing is, it isn't just spending the dollars. My experience, in sustainability, when you start working on a project, how can you sustain, that momentum? There's always that thing where you have, part of classic example would be your winter event. The sleigh event is, nationally known now. I don't think anybody ever envisioned that. You probably just thought of it as a great idea, and let's do it. It's part of Manistee, and look what it's come to. When you could have your last event, you guys had a celebrity there and making the announcements, talking about it because from the area. I think that's a mark of an accomplishment you need to grow on a little more, and you are. I think that's the good thing. Where does that skill set comes in? I think that private business, investment value, how do you leverage the private investment to where it ends up becoming a public investment? And one thing that you could do that with is infrastructure. And reiterate, I think infrastructure is an asset that is underutilized as an economic engine. Especially when investors now want to, and investors can be, the guy down the street all the way to corporation ABC. But anyone that's going to invest their money, they want to know, where that investment is, what's the value of that investment. So they're going to come in and spend $1,000 doing this or $100,000. Are you going to, be able to be successful? And one thing in finance world today is they want to be able to be to a point in their financial plan, and decisions can be made. Well, for those decisions to be made, you have to have a plan laid out. So when they probably walk in and say, you know what, I want to build this here. How long is it going to take me to get permitting? How long is it going to take me to get zoning if it has to be a special use? How long is it going to take me just to have somebody return a phone call? Because you know what, my plan to come here, I have a timetable. And the financial world today, as we all know, they do their due diligence. We probably were in a little bit of a mess in 2007 because the banks sort of just gave out money. And they've learned their lesson. If you want to go try to get money for business today, you better have your genealogical history almost back to time when you were born, from your grandpa to everything else. So one of the things that is very important to businesses that want to invest in the community is having all that good information readily available, prepared, and I've been through that. When in Wilmington we have a 1,500-acre logistics rail park. When I got hired out there, that's what they brought me in for. Specifically, there was a TIF district, enterprise zone, a foreign trade zone was created. When I came in, within 30 days, I did my analysis of where we needed to go today to tomorrow, working with the company and the city council, but finding out what the company needed and where was the stall. They were trying to do this project for 7 years. And within 4 months after we mapped out the strategic plan of how to get from A to B, just to get to a decision that council could vote on it, we were done in less than 4 months. It's unheard of in one respect, but I think having a plan, following through with it, but sitting down with the private end and understanding their culture, what they need from the community, and getting the community involved. Every time we had a meeting, we had notices going out. There was times I was making phone calls to remind, some of those informal leaders in the community, hey, there's another meeting coming up next Tuesday. It's going to talk specifically about the Burlington Northern Rail Spur, and it's going to feed this development. I know you have an interest. Can you make it? Yeah, thanks for calling. Everybody's busy. But identify those informal leaders in the community. Everybody has them. Some of them are, former councilmen. Some of them are just business leaders. Some are just neighbors. And getting people engaged and involved. That's been some of my accomplishments. Why they made it happen. It didn't happen because Tony just wrote a plan up and say, let's follow the plan. Mr. Council, Mrs. Council. Because ultimately, decisions are made here. And if you've got a room full of 100 people, and 99 of them are saying, why are you doing this? Then this guy here didn't do his job. And there are councils that will sit out there and tell the managers, and say, don't worry, we're all going to vote yes, because we know it's the greatest thing for our community. Well, a lot of times when even that happens, we all read about in the paper how everybody was against it, but the council voted yes. Go back and look at those projects and see if they're sustainable. Go back and see what happens to that community, because the fabric of the community is torn because of a major decision made without the community buy-in. Now there's some things that have to get made because of a mandate, and you just have to sit there and go, sorry, but we're mandated to do this. But normally nowadays, just have a little bit of a touch, allow the people to have time to voice their opinion. But that's where businesses get nervous. So they want to know, how do you address that? How do you work that out? Sometimes a businessman will be sitting there and we feel like they're on the Spanish Inquisition, and wondering, oh my God. And everybody says, how come no one supported me? Well, we didn't have that agreement ahead of time, and it could just be the handshake. Let's work together. You didn't tell us everything you were talking about in your presentation. Maybe if we had known about that, we would have said, well, this ain't the time. We need to take apart your presentation and find out if this is valuable and an asset to our community. So that's where the experience comes in economic. But like I say, the other things I bring to the table is most of the employees that work for me and work for the community, they're usually, I'll say, happy. And the reason I'll say that is you take time with your employees. They are probably equal, if not more. The human infrastructure of your organization is just as important as that water tower, if not more important. Respecting and understanding that, and then making that part of your culture, of your team, is understanding the value of your employees. Union or non-union, there's always there's a value there. Employees will work, they work for communities. A lot of them are working for a community because they care. And you give them a little opportunity to care a little bit more, they'll do a little bit more. So, thank you. You're welcome.
Is there any follow-up? You were asked what you're going to do the first 3 months if you come to Manistee, and you're going to interview and you're going to listen. You're going to spend time with the department heads and look at our budget. And in doing so, what are you looking for? What are the important things to you to be an effective manager? What are you looking for?
I'm looking for, when it comes to employees, I'm looking for the employees, do they have a good understanding of and expectations of what their role is, what their job is. And that's important, because if ultimately there's going to be memorandums, or ultimately there's going to be things that you're going to say that you want that employee to get the job done, you want to make sure that, one, I have an understanding of their job, but two, there are expectations of what's expected of them. And if you're a good manager, when you tell, the police chief, it's a classic example, or even the fire chief, about public safety, disaster planning, preparedness. There's a big group coming together for the county, that we all got to talk about this because of the pending snowstorm coming here, and how do you plan to address that, the emergency services, and provide some comfort level that people are confident that we're going to be able to provide emergency services. Well, during that interview stage, I believe because snow being an issue, I'm going to learn that they have all those skill sets already. And then I'm going to find out from that, what resources are we missing? Because there's always a resource. Like, the public works had, with the frozen lines, we all learned with this weather phenomenon, we're all having these ups and downs. Having a little de-icer machine probably would have helped. Of course, you got one once that was identified. But we can't all look in the crystal ball of what every tool every employee needs. But that's what I'd be looking for, to see if they have the resources. And if they don't have the resources, have they asked for it in the past? And if they asked for them, why didn't the budget support it? But maybe there's a way that we need to educate all of us the importance and the priority of that resource. Because sometimes in a budget, there's always, you're looking at this, you're looking at that, and the one that doesn't speak up the most, because they just want to be a team player. I don't want to ask for $10,000 because they don't have it. I want to encourage all the department heads. That's what I'll learn from this. Is maybe the little encouragement's going to have to come from the manager. Say, hey, I want you to be open. If you need this, tell me why. Give me examples. Let's educate your committee, educate your chairman, and let's prepare. It might take 18 months to get this done, but let's prepare for that and help them go through a plan how to get things accomplished. So that's why I'm hoping from the interview stage to give me a little bit of a guidance from learning all that. So.
Thank you. Anything else? All right, that's what we'll do.
From what you learned about us, what do you think our 2 biggest challenges will be in the next 3 years? And how would you tackle them, and what process to follow?
Well, one's a minor one, but it sounds like it's something that needs to happen. You got a right-of-way issue there at 12th Street, you know, and right now it's might be going to a conflict that ultimately goes into litigation. But it's an important little leg. You know, it's your high school, it's your middle school. That road needs to get straightened out. It needs to get repaired properly. You know, it sends a message when people come to visit your community for a sports event there or a theater event. You know, they travel on that road. They wonder, why is this road like this? They don't know the background, you know, because there's a property dispute that's happening. I won't call it a dispute. They have their position, you have yours. I don't know all of it, just know a little bit of it. But I think, you know, the small things sometimes when a manager comes on, that needs to be probably addressed. And you probably have a plan. I don't know what that is. During an interview stage, hopefully I can learn about it and we can find a path of least resistance or ultimately a path of success to make it happen. Probably the second challenge is, you know, when you start working with infrastructure needs and you're traveling out there and, you know, I've heard about the sanitary sewer with, you know, with the, you know, the tribal relations and with, you know, the Little River. I think that's just something that has to just get talked about. You know, it's you know, they have their vision of what they would like to accomplish for their property and for their group of people they have to represent. And, you know, we have one too. But I think there's more information I need to know, but anytime, you know, you have a boundary and all of a sudden that boundary gets separated by the infrastructure, that just sort of tells me from my experience, you got a little bit of challenge going on here. And maybe it just needs to find out. One of the things in boundary agreements, you know, is, which I was very successful in doing throughout my career working in Yorkville. We had numerous boundary agreements with the growth going on there. And I think that's something that's going to have to be addressed. And during that interview and research and all that, I'll probably find out more behind it. But I think we could probably work as a city to address that. And maybe the best thing might be that, you know, they have theirs and we have ours and we move on. But the other relationships has got to carry through because they are a partner in this area. You know, no two ways about it.
Well, you kind of answered the follow-up questions already. What is the most difficult ethical challenge you have faced as a municipal executive? Tell us about how you handled it and what you would do differently, if anything, now.
Well, you know, as the chief of police, you heard about that one. And I wouldn't classify it as difficult. That was, you know, when you're a cop, it's black and white sometimes. It really was. Now, getting through that, you know, ethical dilemma was a challenge, you know, but it worked. But on the village manager side, the city manager side, probably the most challenging thing in anything as a manager is when you find out about an employee that's struggling. And, you know, you sit there and you want to take the human factor in, you know, and when I say struggling is all of a sudden the performance just goes way down. They're a good employee, what happened, what took place. You know, I love to be the grandfather, the father, you know, the pastor, and sort of sometimes you'll say to bring them back into the fold a little bit. But you got to make that decision for the best of the community and the best for your other employees. And when you find out about, even if there is some, you know, other circumstances of why an employee made some indiscretion decision, which is usually misusing a piece of equipment for personal gain or other personal gain, you know, it's pretty much, you know, at that point, you know, you got to deal with it. You deal with the problem that caused it, but you got to deal immediately with the employee. And what I'm talking about, it could be a high-ranking employee. You know, sometimes when you're the newbie, you know, you sit there and go, is this the time for the fight? And that's what you'll ask yourself. You know, when I look in the mirror, it's an ethical thing. It's not a fight, it's the right thing to do. So if that employee's got some indiscretion going on, but you need to not do it alone. that type of ethical decision when you make it, that you need to, go the right path to either correct that, what happened. You need to, meet with, the powers to be, and let's all talk about it. But one thing about talking, private, until we know the path we're going to take. But it's simple in one respect, but there's a lot of forethought. And someone comes walking in your office and says, and it doesn't even have to be in this question of personal gain. It could be harassment. It could be inappropriate postings and things like that. It's like I say, you don't want to sit there and say, let's just see where it goes. You gotta that's an ethical thing. Yeah, you gotta go by your heart, your soul. But the one thing is, you look at it. Is that the right thing to do? And you do the right thing. And that's been done. I've had employees. You regret it a little bit when you know there's a human factor of why they did what they did, but you move on. And I've always been, when you make an ethical decision, you don't want it to be rough because, it's the right thing to do, so you can sit across the table and you walk away and go, I know I did the right thing. Even when it's ethical and it's the right thing to do, you also have another part of the ethical dilemma. Is if you do the right thing, is there something you could do for that employee? Now maybe they don't want to. Maybe they'll sit back and they'll say, you know what, don't worry about me. Yeah, I did it, I'm done. You had to do the right thing, okay. And they walk out. Don't let that be the last conversation. Try to follow up. I think that's one of the ethical parts of a manager is to, try and see if there's something you can do. But a lot of times people make their own decisions.
What is the most important skill a manager can have when it comes to manager-council relationship success? Tell us the time that you had to rely on that talent to build and improve relationships.
Reflective listening. Not just listening. You have to be able to, body language is a lot of your listening and a lot of your communication. So if you're going to, the best, I think that's the highest need skill for a coach is to be not just a good listener, a reflective listener. That reflective listening comes through your body language. If you're preoccupied and you're sort of listening, but you're preoccupied and you're looking out the window, you're doing all that type of stuff, you're not doing yourself any favors if you're a coach. If you're trying to coach and motivate and inspire, be in the game with the person. Just don't say, okay, coach, go get them. Well, this isn't Pee Wee League, this isn't, football, T-ball. These are adults. And if you want to coach them through, take time to listen. But one thing that skill set that goes along with the reflective listening is when you respond back, you need to, I use the easy way, logical, practical way. You need to mean it. And just don't say words. Back it up. When you back up and you follow through, when you want to coach someone, because it's never easy. If you need to improve that, the batting swing, and this is going to happen because you watch a video and you say, hey, let's do this. It happens from truly coaching. And I think a good coach also, will stop by and sort of check on their employee. And when you stop by, don't do the old, hey, how's it going today? Everything looks pretty good. You doing pretty good today? Well, geez, you just interrupted me. I don't know. Did I do something wrong? So be aware of the environment when you're coaching, because that environment helps them that you're coaching to also be a good listener, and sort of hear what you say, and in today's world, with so much going on with the electronics, that touch, and not physically, because today you be very careful on that. But the one thing is the touch is is to stop by, and don't be in a rush. If you truly want to stop by and say hi to somebody first thing in the morning, don't just make it a habit. because all Jay just needs to say hi to everybody in the office. Gotta remember that. That's probably the one thing, and there is a question about the weakness part of life is remembering that, and because we all get so busy, you walk into an office and just sort of say hi to everybody, hey, everything's going great, and you're on your way. Every once in a while, you got to reflect on that. How do you do that? Little notes, little things that sort of remind you of it. And those are the type of things. I think a good coach does that well. And they follow through after you're done coaching. How's it going? Because you're really never done. You want to make sure that they succeed. And one thing about success, recognize it. I don't know how many times you'll hear from an employee when we do those interviews, they might come back and say, I've been here 15 years and I don't think anybody even knows it. Because that invisible employee usually is the one that does the work. Usually the one everybody says, hey, give it to Joe, he'll get it done. And Joe knows he will, and never asks a question. But when you sort of say to him, how's things going? Well, great, it's going good. I know you've been here 15 years. He goes, yeah. You never happened in those 15 years where, anything, is there plaques they give out or anything like that? No. Oh, I guess one time when I was at 10 years, somebody mentioned it. So, I'm okay with that. So remember, as a coach, you need to recognize their accomplishments. Sometimes some people like it privately. Some people like it publicly. So you got to be careful how you do that too.
Any other comments?
What is the most important role the council plays in the success of the community's future, and what will you do to assure that we are effective in that task?
Can you repeat that first part?
What is the most important role the council plays in the success of the community's future?
Well, I think to be open, be verbal, for me, to let me know when I'm doing the right thing and let me know when I'm doing the wrong thing. I think it's a big role for as a manager. I need coaches. It's not unusual that for as managers go, we sort of focused into ourselves and to the task of what needs to get done. But as the council, sometimes when a council member walks over to you after ending a meeting and says, "A little stressed today," well, what do you mean by that? Be a little bit open, but I would encourage that. I think the best way for a manager to be effective is to have good feedback from the council. And there's sometimes, I think the other part is you are the sounding board. You're the ones that are elected. You're the ones that take an oath. You're the ones that the residents will go to. And ultimately, if I do a good job or bad job, it's a reflection on the council. And for your role, what I would also is, if there's anything that, when we'll sit down and talk about how we're going to communicate, I think that's important to understand what works for you. It might be a text, it might be an email, it might be a phone call, it might be a post-it note. Those are the type of things that, as a good manager, communication, understanding how you want us to communicate back and forth. And I think as a group, when decisions are made, right, wrong, and different, if there's 5 yeses, 2 no's, whatever way it happens, the one thing that I do know that a lot of, in today's world, with the video, with everything happening, anyone that's watching your community and wants to move to your community, they're doing their research. They're looking at your videos. They're looking at your minutes, especially businesses, especially partners, other intergovernmental agencies. And I know it's always hard to say you're a team, but as a council, there is a time when the team has to be on the same page after the vote even. And I respect everybody that had a dissenting vote, but there's a time that we need to move on. And I think if the council reacts that way, and you guys do, I've seen the minutes, I've seen your votes. You know, you're always debating, which is good, and that's another thing I would love to encourage is an active debate. But if you need information, you know, and we're not providing it, you know, let us know. And I think that's where it comes down to. If we communicate that way, I think it'll help with your decisions when you need to make those important ones. Almost every vote's important. Even the adjournment vote is important. It's time to go home.
Do you find it best to provide your council with recommendations for actions or merely options from what they may choose?
Both. And I know that's a political statement probably. But the reason I say both is there are times when, you know, it's been debated, it's at a point, and you're asking for that recommendation. And when you know, and there's a need for that, and I need as the manager to say, you know, we need your recommendation. You're the one we put here. I'll read that probably ahead of time and say, you know, I'll provide you a recommendation at the next meeting. And I have no problem working on the fly. If there's enough information, the options are out there, and there's been a good debate, and someone says, hey, let's see what the city manager says. We got option 1, 2, and 3. You know, if somebody asks me that direct question, which is the best option, and I would recommend, I'll say it. You know, if I hear some good debate, and if there isn't, I'll say why. I'll say why. I heard a lot here tonight. I think there's an option 4. You know, and we need to probably look at that. But recommendations by the city manager, that is part of our job. You know, we have to provide the recommendations. And the good thing about that is part of the job is the department heads looking for that support. They'll have something that they're bringing in. If it truly meets all the criteria, you know, I shouldn't be the guy that did waivers and says, I'll let the council decide. No. No, it's time for me to say, you know what, you're right. This is a recommendation we need to move forward on. I support you on that, and I'll give a recommendation to the city council.
Are you more of a manager or a leader? And can you describe how you exemplify the best of that quality?
I would put me in the leader category. And good leaders, you know how to manage. And managing isn't a control tactic. It's what's expected when you have certain duties and responsibilities and expectation of, you know, leading the organization. And the organization is the team of people that you have all appointed to those positions, from the fire chief, police chief, public works, parks, and all your appointments to the boards. You know, so as that leader, you know, there's a time when you're the leader that people are expecting you to be that advocate for the board. You know, when there's an important issue in legislation, that leader needs to be there. Needs to have a, you know, I've testified where they have a clock that says 2 minutes. You gotta be prepared, because, you know, one of the things is I would love to have you guys come back and go, wow, I saw that on TV, that was good. You know, you represented us well. And I think that is, you know, that's a big compliment for one. But that's what the leader should do, is, you know, when it's important, that leader needs to take that role of providing the best, you know, perception, but also, you know, when you walk in, you know, people will say, oops, here comes Tony. I wonder what he's going to say today. That's a good thing, because that means they're going to listen for once. A lot of people in these hearings, it's all a game. You know, they want to hear. But one thing is, as leader, you have to remember, you're not the one that ultimately has the name on it. It's the mayor. So as a leader, you have to be able to work well with. It's a time when it's a proper thing for, you know, the manager to be up there, but there's a time for the mayor to be there, or who's ever in charge of that committee may be. But as a good leader, you're now becoming that coach, that handler, to help put that best foot forward representing the community. So leaders, you know, they share. And I think that's the one skill that I have no ego problem when it comes down to leadership. At the end of the day, when everybody says, wow, good job, that's good enough for me. And and when you take the management in, the management's there, you know, as a leader. Like I say, when the department head needs something, and they've done their job, and you've helped them bring good information together, right? It's helped manage that to get to the point where the leader can make a decision. And that's the difference between just managing and leading. You know, you can manage all day long your car, maintenance wise, you know, taking care of your car. It's sort of managing to make sure you get the most value out of your car. You know, when it comes down to how do you lead your car to be the best, you do certain things, you enhance things, you do things. And the reason I do the cars, you know, I do car shows. I love watching them, going to them, and it's amazing how that car, you get to see the leadership quality in it. You know, and that car is a leader. And that was brought. I didn't think of that myself. That was one of my mentors used that analogy and said, "You go to car shows. What do you think of that?" Never thought of a car being a leader. But at the end of the day, they always vote and say, "That's the leading car." Okay, sort of fits.
When hiring a new department director to join your team, what skills and characteristics would they need to possess and why?
Well, you go to your values, and I'll try to transform those values into their skills. When you talk about fairness, you talk about, you know, someone being trustworthy, someone being honest. You want to sort of see that in how they, you know, have done their accomplishments. When you recruit, skills is one thing, but the credentials alongside those skills. You know, and the one thing to remember too is skills in a public sector is valuable, but there's added value when you got skills in the private sector. And the reason is the private sector is the real world. Money in, money out. You really can't do much about that when you're in the private sector. You're either going to fail or lose your business. The hard knocks of business is a valuable skill set that you can learn. And you sometimes want to sort of dig a little deeper. Do they have that type of, you know, behavior, that type of character trait, that they understand the hard knocks of life a little bit? And maybe that's come up in my age, you know, a little bit. I see that, but I see that as a valuable tool, you know, when you want to hire someone. I think the other skill set is, are they recognized by their peers, you know, in regards to someone in that, you know, position. And I think that's important a little bit, because when you get a department head that walks in to that office for the, you know, first day, you know, just like, you know, even as a city manager, you're displaying, you know, the city managers all over the place, which is great. But when you walk in, will they be recognized as the person that could get the job, know the job, understand the job? And the only way you can do that is, you know, by checking their references a little bit, but also just looking beyond what's on the paper. When you interview, you know, ask some of those easy questions, I think, you know, which says, well, like you just asked me, what's one of the best things you did? But then maybe dig just a little deeper, you know, and say, you know, what was the challenge to maybe buy a piece of equipment if you're a public works guy? You know, you're proud of that, but, you know, why did it take so long to get that purchase done? Does it seem to be an easy thing to do? They simply put them on the spot a little bit and see how they respond. The other thing is it's like anything in human research, you got to follow the rules. You know, we have all these federal mandates and everything else out there, which is great, but you got to follow the rules. You love to be able just to go talk to anyone, but you got to be able to have the rules, you know, in place so that the employee that your potential candidate understands. You might be making a phone call to you know, a previous employer. You might be making a phone call here, and as everything goes, usually when someone's in your office and someone sees them, if anybody locally knows the person, it always seems like somebody's going to knock on your door and tell you. Not a bad thing. I think it's a good thing, because sometimes getting a little perspective, you know, saying, well, you know that person, okay. Why do you think it's a good fit? What you know about them? You know, and that helps, you know, when you do your research.
Good morning, Tony.
Yes.
We do have good news for you. We do get WGN America up here, so you can watch the Cubs.
Yeah, that's good to hear. That's good news.
We're about halfway. We'll have to have over halfway with the question. So,
Okay.
Like with the water or anything? Please.
I'm doing good so far, you know.
Okay.
You haven't waterboarded me yet, so it's good.
Is that in the schedule?
Later.
Okay. Just three questions. First, getting to a collaborative agreement on contentious issues is always difficult. Some municipalities, face tough financial choices, often struggle with resident disagreements over the plan for the future. Walk us through the time when you faced a particularly diverse problem and tell us the process you used to get the parties to say yes.
Well, I'll take it always seems to focus around infrastructure when you deal with the community itself, because that's what you provide. You know, and water is always an interesting commodity, an enterprise that municipalities have. Probably one of your best assets. It's there, and how you manage that asset. The challenge when I came into Wilmington, we were getting water from the Kankakee River. We're one of the few communities that has surface water in the Chicagoland area. Most everybody gets it from deep wells or from Lake Michigan water. And then you got to deal with Chicago, and we all know the challenges with Chicago. So the deep wells are now we have some radium in them and all the great things that the government says that could be harmful. And most likely, you know, with certain parameters, you got to protect that. But in Wilmington, we had a water plant that was not maintained, you know, mainly due to the fact that there was competing dollars because the sanitary sewer plant was in violation 3 years before I came there to build a new one. And it was $14 million. And it was based on a house of cards financing. They were based all on growth to be able to pay down that, not to be able to raise your fees. So there was a lot of competing dollars in utility billing. And so once you learn what the issues really are, the community was very, you know, of course, 2010, nobody wanted water rates or sewer rates to go up. So once we did our assessment evaluation, hearing the anecdotal information and then looking at budgets, we came back and, you know, identified that we had a water loss in our water plant and billing of 41%. Any business that had a water loss like that, how did they survive? And they weren't surviving. The reserve and everything else they had built up from developers that paid some dollars up front, things was depleting. So we had to make a rough decision. But the one thing about the decision, when we talked about it, is we sat down as a group, the council, the water department, the private business community, and identified what the problem is with a 41% loss. And the plant hasn't been updated, and it needs to get updated so it can handle the growth that's coming in. We need to sit down and not just go out and get a bond, and that's the fix of everything, and just tax everybody. No way. That's not the proper way to handle any enterprise fund. Enterprise funds should be self-sustaining from the fees that are collected. So we started educating and letting the council, the community understand we got a problem. As a group, we got a problem. And everybody there said, wow, we got the best water in the world. You know, don't ever think about, you know, the water's why people are coming here. Okay, great. I was glad to hear that buy-in. That we didn't have a problem with our water tasting and our quality of water. So we worked through understanding, you know, that we had a problem. We had all this loss. What were we going to do about it? So we the typical thing, a lot of small city. Internally, we couldn't do a rate study. We couldn't do an analysis. And plus, to tell you the truth, I think it was time with the recommendation I gave was we have a third party come in here. And that was before I talked to all the superintendents of water and superintendents of sewer, and you know, and council was on board with this. Sometimes you need that third party, extra set of eyes to look over what the issues were. The one thing that was enlightening when I gave them the first report was 40% loss. There wasn't a councilman or the mayor that didn't realize we had that loss. Now the good thing about it was I had about 30% of it solved by the time I came public with that. And I grinned a little bit because a lot of the loss was just bad documentation. We had no meters in any of the public facilities that we own, so the water was just being used with no documentation. We didn't have any meters, and God bless our school districts, and God bless our park district. We were park district there, our libraries. Give them flat rates, but no meters. So we had no idea how much water they were using. And in the school district, we had the greenest football field alive. So they were using a lot of water for that. And the superintendent understood it. He was a former councilman, actually. So I sat down with him and says, hey, we're not getting excited here, but we have a mandate from the IEPA. We have to report this loss. And we've been reporting it, but nobody's been doing anything about it. Well, we have to start documenting all the water being used. Well, no problem. They're going to charge me. But that's not my decision. That's a council. You've been getting free water to irrigate and do everything. Both the council handle it. But you want my recommendation? He goes, yeah, I don't want to know what you want to say, Tony. Yes, we need to charge it. Now maybe we give you a little bit of a break. But 40% of your students don't live in the city because it's just like, it's a district. So you got other townships all coming in. So those individuals that are using the facility, they're not paying property taxes, they're not paying anything in the water fund. So we got to charge you something, He understood that. So we sat down, we went over a few things, we went public with the loss. Yeah, there was some great press on it, all that stuff that we're not managing and everything else. But the good thing about it, even the local media, which I bring media in all the time, you gotta keep them in the loop because they're a communication tool. So the media, the editor and all that understood what our plan was. And so when it came out, he was sort of supportive. It's time that, we get our house in order. So ultimately, we had to look at strategies. How are we going to resolve this to keep the rates down? Well, one of the things that was very controversial, what I recommended, was we need to look at a private water company buying our water plant. Because it is a great asset, and I found in the books and files, there was 2 companies always asking, we'll buy your water plant, we'll run it for you, you can outsource everything, and we'll pay you a royalty, and then your customers will get a lower rate. Nobody wanted to really talk about that. It's the 800-pound elephant in the room. But if you're going to look at it, you got to look at everything. Well, that went out in the paper. City's looking to, we're underwater. Great title. They're underwater. They're selling it to a private entity. It took about 3 months to get beyond that. But the water rate study went on. When information came back, we always kept updates. Every time there was a milestone made with the study, there was an update given to the community. So it wasn't this 300-page document. All of a sudden, one night, they gave a 45-minute presentation on the water rate study. We did it in pieces. And at the end of the day, we're now at 9% water loss. Part of that is just natural evaporation in the system is anywhere between 7% and 11%. So we're at 9. It's right in the middle. Kudos to our superintendent and his crew. Our water rate did go up, but it didn't go up like everybody had predicted. We're now at $5.75 per 1,000 gallons. We were at $3.50, and they thought we were going to go to $10. When the study came out. But now that we did some efficiency, we did go get an EPA loan because there was a grant for forgiveness, they called it. So we were able to get 75% loan, 25% forgiveness. For $1 million, we did an efficiency, what I call the efficiency loan, for retooling and making the operations more efficient. Because water is determined on manpower and labor. Labor cost goes into the rate. We were able to reduce labor costs by having less hours of production because we made it more efficient. Less electricity because we used variable rate driver pumps. So, great story at the end of the day, very controversial when it started out, but we all worked through it, and I think for the betterment, our credentials are a little bit better. The other thing that really helped with that, we went to what I would call more of a smart meter. We upgraded all our meters to radio reads, not just to drive-by radio reads. We've got a system that you could actually go in, only our utility company, because we're not so good with that cyber stuff yet that anybody could go into it. But they could call up and they could ask, hey, my water bill seems a little high. Immediately the lady could go in, she could look at it, she could run a 24-hour period with their permission, and says, you know, at 3 o'clock you did 18 gallons, 4 o'clock you did 12 gallons. You know, usually it's toilet running. And the public loves it. And they come back and go, wow, what should we do? Well, you probably got a toilet running or something. And then all of a sudden they see immediate impact. I think that was great because now we have another tool that we can communicate and let people know, yeah, we know our rates are a little bit higher than they were. They're still lower than everybody else in the area, but you got to work through that perception. But now we have a tool that to help you conserve, and if your bill gets up, we also have we just created software with a software provider. We now have a trigger that if any bill goes over 25% water use, it automatically will flag it when they run the bills at the end of the month. And so now we'll get those 60 or 80, and immediately then we send out a postcard. Please contact us. Your water usage went over 25%. We have little things in there saying why. And usually most people call us. One other thing, we made it easier for the on the pocketbook. We went to monthly billing. And some people looked at smoke and mirrors, because when the bill came out, instead of being 2 months, it was 1 month. It was almost equal to the first month. That wasn't any good, but to tell you the truth, most people pay bills monthly. When we had 40% that do an automatic pay, they loved it. They're going, oh, thank God you're doing monthly. It's all easy for me to budget.
Thank you.
I believe that you answered the next question,
Oh.
so thank you. Next question. Every Michigan community has faced severe financial difficulties over the last decade. When you look at our budget and forecast over the next couple of years, what do you see and what are you bringing to the table that will help us manage our financial challenges? Excuse me.
Well, first off, it's just recognizing it is a challenge, and it's a reality too. You know, you can sit here and point fingers on where that revenue went, why are we not getting our dollars. It should be coming back to our community when you pay your tax dollars and everything else. But knowing it's a challenge, knowing you have to look at it, you do have to start doing, when you do your budgets, you got to start doing, like I say, the enterprise funds, they have to be self-sustaining. So the fees, you know, no, you can't have any, you know, on the general corporate supplementing in the enterprise funds. Second thing is, when you do have to manage, you know, when you don't know for sure where your dollars are going to be coming from on a regular basis, because the state could arbitrarily pass something and you get less motor fuel tax dollars, or you get, you know, less return dollars from the revenue sharing. You have to look at your budget in more of a long-term, 2-3 year budgeting is crucial. Because at least you're now planning that when you spend dollars today, how are you going to sustain maybe spending that same dollar over 3 years if something does come back? So there's an expectation in the community that, you know, boy, why did you all of a sudden cut back on that program? Did you guys see this coming? You started the program and all of a sudden you got to cut back. So that's one of the things when you do citizen surveys, one of the things that most people will say is, don't start something you can't finish, you know, or support. And you know, you have that challenge here because you have a couple of enterprise funds that are underwater. They happen, you know, especially when you're talking about cultural type of, you know, facilities or recreational type facilities. You know, when they're impacted by the marketplace, and when fishery is down, you can't help but, you know, your marina is impacted. You know, when the gas prices change, you get less dollars, you know. Not that we all like high gas prices, but in government, it's a few more dollars coming in. But those are the challenges when prices go high. People want to cut back. And so how do you predict and forecast your budgets is important when you have those challenges. And you guys are doing a good job of that. You got that three-year budgeting. You got capital planning. That's crucial. And when you encumber, like in your capital street plan, you're encumbering $600,000 for your street program over the next 10 years. That's a great start in your street program. I think every one of you would like to put more into it. And maybe there's a way that can happen, but you got to start somewhere with good expectations that you can sustain it. And I think that's was the important vote there. Is you all knew you would love to put 200 more thousand or 300 more, 400 more thousand in there, but you want to be able to sustain it. And the expectation is, why you get a big splash for 2 years and all of a sudden, oh, sorry, we can't do it anymore. Well, what type of plan is that? So to answer your question, how important it is budget planning is crucial. I think the other part is education, letting the community understand where the dollars are coming from and where the dollars are not coming from. And the finger pointing, it's great to go tell your legislators, finger point at them, you're impacting us. This is the programs that you are impacting by reducing that money. That's good. Because legislators are just like you guys. They need to hear from the local community, and they're busy. If they don't hear, they don't know. And we all know that lobbyists, have the word. I know the Michigan Municipal League is probably out there lobbying every day for local authorities. But like I said, I think for the challenge is budget planning is crucial, long-term, short-term.
Thank you. You've given us some really great answers in depth. We're coming towards our time.
Okay.
I just want to ask Council, are there any questions that have not been asked that you feel that we need to follow up with? If not, I guess we're going to turn the tables. Is there any questions that you might have that you need answered to help determine if this is going to be a good fit for you?
Why, no, not really at this time. And the reason I could say that is, your staff's been very good. The municipal league's been good at telling us a lot about the community. And you have a great, information online. So, researching, you call an investigator and me, you pretty much are an open book. I applaud that to you. Probably the only challenge that I see is going to be a relocation. Not challenge that I could find a place easy. I already have. Say there's a couple places that's going to be for the wife, but she's out looking again now because once we leave, it's 4.5 hour drive back. But if Mr. Coe can go to Chicago and come back in the same day, I think that's a testament that I can do the same thing and needed to go home for something when transition was going on. But one question I would ask more that it seems to be on the edge of discussion, and maybe I missed it through all the questions, and the economic development, with the brand, transition a little bit, but with the Port Authority. You guys are exploring that a little bit more thoroughly, or was it just a discussion item?
That's been a discussion item. It's been brought up several different times, but nothing has really materialized to date on that.
It's an interesting, it'd be an interesting exploration to see if there's a value there. Where in Wilmington we're the largest inland port in Wilmington with the intermodals and the truck traffic and everything else. We're going to be going through an exercise for 2 years about the Greater Port Authority. And there's some good things and there's some things that challenge.
Thank you. Well, I appreciate it.